But from my perspective, actually, resolution of uncertainty is the most important factor. So we think those things are going to coalesce. You also have rising global liquidity from central banks. That has started to change. I think we're set up for a very strong Q4, particularly as we get toward the November election and beyond.
This content is brought to you by Gemini, which is one of the top exchanges in the crypto market. I am a user of this platform, and they make it easy for you to buy, sell, and trade crypto. They offer a variety of great crypto products and services, such as a fully functional exchange and app. They offer staking, they have a great credit card, and they have a USD-backed stablecoin called Gemini Dollar. They also offer a derivatives platform where you can easily do all types of crypto trading with perpetual contracts and much more. If you sign up and you trade $100 in Bitcoin, you can get $10 in Bitcoin in return using the code WELCOME10. So if you'd like to learn more about Gemini, visit the link in the description. Welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and with me is Matt Hougan, who is the Chief Investment Officer at Bitwise Asset Management. Matt, great to have you on.
Tony, it's great to be back. Good to see you.
Man, lots to talk about. Bitwise has made some big acquisitions, and I see you guys making these moves, grabbing more market share. Tell us about these acquisitions and what's your vision?
Yeah, we're really excited. We had the opportunity to acquire ETC Group in Europe. They are one of the leading crypto ETP providers in that market. They have the largest physically backed Bitcoin ETP. They have staking ETPs. They've been a real pioneer in that market. We've always had our eye on Europe, but it's difficult for a US firm to expand into a new market on its own. We really connected with the culture of ETC Group. They're a great group. And with their core principles, they're very crypto forward. As an example, they already disclose the custody address of their ETFs, which is a practice that we pioneered here in the US. So it was just the perfect match. We're really excited to bring them on board and excited to grow Bitwise as a global brand.
That's awesome. And with regards to the European market, you mentioned there's staking. So there's a lot more clarity there. There's a lot more products, right?
It's such a relief. It's unbelievable to go from this, hazy US regulatory market into Europe, where there are clearly things you can do and clearly things that you cannot do, right? There are certain crypto assets that you can't list ETPs on, but there are a wide variety that you can. And just knowing that that's possible and knowing that the regulators will work with you is a tremendous relief. So whether that's in Switzerland, which is a booming crypto market, or the EU, where ETC Group has sort of pioneered access through Xetra in Germany. It is really wonderful to operate with a little bit more regulatory clarity. I hope it's a taste of what's coming here in the US. And if it is, I can tell you that it tastes pretty good.
For sure. Now, the other acquisition was Osprey's Bitcoin fund, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Osprey had a private Bitcoin fund, OBTC. And we're in the process of bringing that into our Bitcoin ETF. Assuming it's successful, it will be, it would be just a win-win. I think it should lower costs. It should provide continuity. Look, we think the crypto market is entering another major bull market period. I know it doesn't feel like that right now. We're all, sad about September. We've been chopping sideways since March. People are worried about the political outcome. But from our point of view, the sort of 4-year cycle is still intact. There's a lot to be excited about in crypto. Now is the time, to stake your position and grow aggressively. And that's what you're seeing from Bitwise in those acquisitions. It's also what you're seeing in our sort of distribution strategies on our core products. And we're really excited for the next, couple years and what it will mean for Bitwise and for the industry.
Now, speaking of, sad September, but, there's an optimistic October coming, seasonality wise, right? We've seen September has been pretty bad. There's the saying, sell in May, go away. So next week we have the Fed interest rate cuts coming. The DXY looks like it's going to continue to break downwards. It seems all signs are pointing, as you're saying, that Q4 may start to get going and the markets will start to look a bit better.
Yeah, I think that's right. Look, from my perspective, the thing that markets hate more than anything else is uncertainty.
Mm.
And we've been dealing around huge uncertainty, uncertainty around the direction and timing of Fed rate cuts. I know we're all now in this 25 or 50 basis point camp and rate cuts are a fait accompli, but it wasn't that long ago that we were wondering when Powell and company would decide it's time to move into rate cuts. And it wasn't that long ago that Fed governors were speculating on rates going up another 25 basis points. So the resolution of uncertainty around rate cuts and the scope of those rate cuts, and then the resolution of uncertainty around the election.
Mm.
Again, I know people are like worried, Trump, Harris, what will it mean, etc. But from my perspective, actually, resolution of uncertainty is the most important factor. So we think those things are going to coalesce. You also have rising global liquidity from central banks. That has started to change. I think we're set up for a very strong Q4, particularly as we get toward the November election and beyond.
Now, Matt, I saw a interaction between you and someone on X, and it was basically a person trying to say the Bitcoin ETFs were a failure. And I'm scratching my head like, how is it a failure with the amount of capital that came in with just a period of months? The fastest growing ETFs in the history of ETFs. I don't know, maybe the people who are trying to short Bitcoin or people who just want to see it fail are coming out of the woodwork when the price is down.
Yeah, the challenge with the argument they were making, they were trying to say there isn't institutional adoption of these ETFs because mostly these ETFs are owned by retail investors. The point I was making was even if you excluded all the retail money that came in and just looked at the institutional money, they would be the most successful ETFs of all time by a huge factor.
Mm.
So, it is true that retail investors are buying Bitcoin ETFs. That's great. This is one of the best, cheapest ways to get exposure to Bitcoin that exists. It's very familiar, particularly to older generations who are more used to brokerage accounts than they are to wallets or apps. Great. But that doesn't mean that institutions aren't buying them as well. I come from an ETF background. The thing I love about ETFs is that little old me can own the same exact product as the Harvard endowment.
Mm.
And we can both own it for our own reasons, getting the same deal. That's all that's happening here. My, father is buying the ETF and the state of Wisconsin is buying the ETF.
Right.
And that's the rising tide. And I think flows are going to reaccelerate in Q4. And I think flows in 2025 will be higher than 2024.
Mm. Now, with regards to the Ethereum ETF, I know it's hard to be, maybe not the first child, the second child. I forgot the saying, but Bitcoin steals the show, rightfully so. And ETH, maybe they should have waited for the ETH launch a little bit,
Yeah.
But anyway, it's live. What is your anticipation? Do you expect that to grow as well? And do you potentially see come a regime change, some things that may happen in Congress with regulations that potentially we get staking next year?
Yeah. You and I talked about this before it launched. I think I said that I would rather the ETF for ETH launched later. I think it would have been more successful if it launched in 2025, just because the investors we talk to who are professional investors are still getting their hands around Bitcoin.
Right.
I know that that sounds goofy to people on this podcast, right? Because the idea that you're still getting your hands around Bitcoin, but that's where most people are. They're going 0 to 1. And then to complicate the story and talk to them about, Turing complete blockchains and applications built on blockchain, it's just a lot. So
Mm.
these ETFs have actually been pretty successful from my perspective. We have a couple $100 million in our ETF. That's a top, 2 or 3% ETF launch. That's pretty good. We'll take it. But I think they will build over time. I also think more than Bitcoin, Ethereum is wrestling with this election uncertainty.
Mm.
Bitcoin has kind of gotten through the regulatory hurdle. There's not much that regulators can do to harm Bitcoin. There's still uncertainty on ETH. Remember, the SEC and the CFTC have different views. DeFi and other ecosystems built around Ethereum have a great deal of regulatory exposure. So I think I'd be surprised to see ETH rally until we get sort of to the election or beyond and we see what the Harris campaign positions itself on crypto. I just think there's more uncertainty in that market.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially like layer two is built on Ethereum, there's a lot of uncertainty there. So
Yeah.
certainly we need clarity to help part the Red Sea here so we can go through. Um, but with that said, are you planning to do anything with a Solana ETF? We know in the EU and so forth, there's Solana ETFs already live. But are you planning to throw your hat in the ring just to get the ball rolling ahead of time? And then maybe in 2025, we'll see how things go.
Yeah. So I will say we're spending a lot of time analyzing what the SEC has said. They sort of summarily rejected the first two applications. That doesn't mean the door is closed. Remember, Bitcoin ETFs were rejected for 10 years, and it was worth the wait. So we are doing a lot of work on the underlying markets around protections against market manipulation and how to demonstrate that through data. Bitwise has always led with data in its SEC filings. We've always, for better or worse, submitted like 200, 300 pages of data with every filing that we make. We're very excited about the Solana ecosystem. We think it's robust. So we're doing the work on that and on certain other assets. The timing of when we're filing them, it just depends on how fast we get through that work and what we find.
Matt, I have to ask, and you probably won't be able to answer me, but those certain other assets, are they in the top 10? Are they like Avalanche? Are they XRP, Cardano?
We're looking at a wide array of assets. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it's
I do
exciting to hear that.
yeah, look, we've entered the ETF era of crypto. It's much harder to go from 0 to 1 than it is to go from 1 to 100 in anything, but also in ETFs. It's going to take regulatory changes, maybe changes in the direction of how the SEC thinks about this market. But there are a number of robust assets that deserve ETPs, in my view. In Europe, you see these ETPs helping investors get safe, low-cost exposure to these assets. I think we're going to get there in the US. So yeah, stack up the pillows behind your right shoulder. We're working on them.
Matt, what do you think about Memecoin ETFs? And I know there's a stigma, there's a lot of uncertainty around meme coins. They're very risky and so forth, but there are some established ones like Dogecoin, Shiba Inu, and so forth. Do you think there's appetite for that? Maybe not now, but after the blue chip altcoins like Cardano and so forth, that maybe meme coins might have a turn?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know if they fit into the Bitwise framework of the world, but I will say that, if you look at the broader ETF ecosystem, there are lots of ETFs that just exist as trading tools
Hmm.
and are widely adopted and widely used. And if you can sort of answer this from two different viewpoints, right?
Hmm.
You can have the fundamental critique of meme coins, but whatever, people want exposure to them.
Yeah.
Why not let them get exposure to them in a safe, secure, familiar ETF package where custody is handled and trading is understood and all of these things? I think, broadly speaking, I think that would be great. I don't know that Bitwise is going to be in that game, but I would be supportive of these ETFs existing. People are going to find exposure to these things one way or the other, and I would rather they do it on an ETF than they do it on FTX. Like that's just a positive trade for society. So, we'll look at it, we'll think about it, we'll see how that develops.
And on that note, with tokenized assets, so let's say you got BlackRock's BITL fund, right, a tokenized fund on Ethereum. As other players like Franklin Templeton and other folks start to launch these, does it make sense to put some of those in ETFs? And that could be completely off base, but I'm curious about that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we'll see that. My view on those tokenized products, really exciting, is that those are serving a crypto native industry. Those are serving people who are actually crypto native but need fund exposure. Like they're serving hedge funds who want to monetize their cash over the weekend. They're serving yeah, other crypto traders that are crypto native. So I actually think the demand for these tokenized products for the next 2 years plus is going to come from crypto and
Mm.
not from traditional investors. And I think that's great. So I'm very bullish on that space.
Mm.
I'll have to think about whether it makes sense to package those in ETFs. But I do think there's going to be a convergence between these tokenized real world asset products and the traditional markets. I think the demand is coming from crypto, not from the traditional markets, and therefore it's fine to be in a crypto native package.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know it's still early. So, one of the things I've been thinking about is when tokenized real estate comes around, and let's say an island gets tokenized somewhere in the Bahamas, or a building in Manhattan and Midtown gets tokenized. Can I access that? Because I know land and property value rises, and there's a whole story behind it with global liquidity and everything. But if I can access that safely and easily through an ETF, why not?
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, I like that idea. I think you'll need some regulatory progress and regulatory developments,
Hmm.
but long term, I love that idea. I do think there are probably a couple regulatory steps before we get there.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else going on with Bitwise? Anything else on your remainder of 2024 roadmap?
A lot of education. I mean, we're still out there every day meeting, with advisors and professional investors. Look, it's easy to get lost in the day to day. But the thing we're emphasizing to people is if you think about how far crypto has come in the last 2 years, it should make you very excited for the next 2 years. 2 years ago, it was FTX. Now it's Larry Fink. That's a pretty good trade. And 2 years from now, I think, regardless of what happens in November, it'll be pretty exciting. So mostly just education. We have some new product ideas that we were working on. I just came from a product meeting. I would tell you the fun things we're working on, but they won't let me. So, but keep an eye out. Look, we're trying to build a global, innovative crypto asset manager that provides a wide array of products. Currently, we have 20 products available to investors. That's going to expand. There's more you can do in this space. So look for Bitwise to be, moving fast and aggressive.
Yeah, I'm excited because you guys have definitely been ahead of the curve in many different facets of the industry and building a really great products ahead of these ETFs before anyone was talking about this. So excited for those things, and when they do come out, we'll have you back on to talk about them.
Let's do it. I love it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, thank you, Matt.